So a few words of explanation for how the Aliyah works. The first thing you need to remember are two bits of historical facts. The first thing is you have to remember the book of Nehemiah, chapter 8. And it describes how Ezra and Nehemiah come back from the Babylonian exile, and eventually they gather all the people together in Jerusalem. And everyone is there, and Ezra and Nehemiah build a huge tower in the center of the field. Everyone gathered around, and we have a description of that first public reading of the Torah. So they're on a tower, 7 people to the right, 7 people to the left to give it its formal pose. And then Ezra calls out, he calls the people to bless God. Everyone rises and blesses God. And then Ezra starts reading from the Torah. And our Torah reading is modeled after that. So the bima is the high place, represents the tower. There's always a person to the right and a person to the left, and that's why we have the two zganim. The blessing starts with Baruch Hu et Adonai, bless the Lord. That's how Ezra called out to the people. The people answer, Baruch Adonai HaMbarach, the Lord is blessed. That's the answer that they gave in the book of Nehemiah. And then we go in and we do the reading. So that's the first thing you need to remember. The second thing you need to remember is that once upon a time, when they did the public reading of the Torah, they would call someone up to read the Torah. They would get there, they would say the blessings and read it and say the blessing afterwards and go to the side, and the next person would come, say the blessing, read it, and finish. But ultimately, we changed the way that we do it. What was wrong with that system is that only people who knew how to read the Torah could be called to the Torah. And we wanted a system that anyone could be called to the Torah, even if you didn't know how to do the reading. So the way we read is you're called to the Torah. There's a professional reader who reads, and the person being called to the Torah is standing there, but isn't actually the person publicly reading from the Torah. Now, from a halachic point of view, that's really difficult, because if you're not the person reading from the Torah, how can you count as reading from the Torah? So we do all kinds of things to make that person who's standing there count as if they're the ones reading from the Torah. We make sure that they touch at the beginning and they touch at the end. We make sure that they hold the Torah. We make sure that they mouth the words, that they're doing everything to make it count as if they're the ones reading from the Torah, even though in fact there's a professional reader who's reading from the Torah. And those two things together gave us the Torah reading the way that we do it today. So if I demonstrate, now Guy will come in and we'll run through it, and at each stage I'll explain what that principle is. So I've called you to the Torah. The first thing I do when I call you to the Torah is I point where we start so that you know where you're starting your reading. You touch it with the fringe of your talit and kiss the talit because it's touched the Torah. Notice that we try to never touch the parchment itself. The parchment is considered holy. We don't want to touch it. And also, there's oils in your fingers, in your skin, that if you touch it too much, it will actually damage the Torah. So we try not to touch the Torah. So I point, but with a pointer, not with my hand. And you kiss with your talit and not with your hand. Right? So you've kissed the spot so you know where your blessing belongs, that you're the one who's reading. And now we close the Torah. We close the Torah because we don't want people to think that your blessing is written in the Torah. Right? That's not the reading. So we close the Torah. You hold on to it because you're the reader. And now you say the blessing.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMvorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMvorach le'olam va'ed. And that is mimicking what was in the book of Nehemiah. You called people, bless the Lord, and the whole community answered by blessing the Lord. Now you go on and you say the blessing for reading the Torah.
Baruch Adonai HaMvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher b'habanu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Okay. So I just point out, you said the blessing perfectly. When you got to the end, you opened it up, because now we're ready for the reading. When you mentioned Torah, et ha-Torah, you lifted it so that we know that this is the Torah that you're talking about. It's not an abstract concept of Torah, it's this Torah. And now I'm ready to read. The first thing I do is I say Amen, because you've recited a blessing, I've heard a blessing. If you're reading for yourself, if I get called up to the Torah, you don't say Amen, because you don't say Amen after your own blessings, you only say Amen after listening to someone else's blessings. The word Amen means that's the truth. And so you heard the blessing and you respond by saying, that's the truth. So I'll start my reading. Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor ki tisah. I won't continue. You follow as I read, and you're mouthing the words, because he said a blessing for reading the Torah, you better be reading the Torah. Otherwise, that's what we call a bracha levatala, a wasted blessing, and that's considered taking God's name in vain. You've mentioned God's name in a blessing, and you're not actually doing a mitzvah. So you say the words, so that the blessing is for something. I read along, again following with the yad. When I reach the end, you see that I've come to the end, and now you touch that spot again, so you acknowledge the end of the reading. I'll also point out, while I was reading, you held the Torah, so that you're connected to the Torah that you're reading. And also, technically, it's very hard to read and to hold at the same times, and the Torah tends to want to close itself. It's usually in the closed position. So you're holding it open for me, you're helping me, you've kissed at the end, we roll it closed again so that we won't think that the blessings are written in the Torah, and now you recite the blessing that comes at the end of the Torah reading.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chaye olam nata b'torachenu, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. So we have the Amen for the end, and then we would normally cover the Torah, because we don't leave the Torah uncovered if it's not in use. That's part of the respect of the Torah. Okay, and that's kind of how we do the Aliyah. Any questions? No. Thank you.